A couple years back, Kawhi Leonard decided to join the Clippers and forced them to trade for Paul George so that way he could have another two-way player and a clear number 2 option on the team. Fast forward to today, and you got a lot of fans criticizing that decision, saying he should have stayed in Toronto or went to the Lakers with LeBron and AD. But remember, hindsight is always 20/20, because at the time, this was looked at as a great move and a power move by Kawhi Leonard. This video is going to explain why Kawhi chose the Clippers and why Kawhi chose Paul George. Let's start with the Clippers. So first of all, they were an 8th seed the year before Kawhi Leonard decided to join them. They had a 48-34 record, which is pretty impressive. They were actually only 1 game back from the 6th seed. In the first round, they actually pushed the Warriors. Patrick Beverley was all over Kevin Durant, and they threw a bunch of guys at him, and it looked like this team had a lot of promise. So Kawhi decided, I want to go to LA, but I don't want to jump on the bandwagon that LeBron and AD are starting, so let me go to the Clippers. And that brings us to Paul George. If you remember, Paul George was having an MVP year in OKC. He averaged 28 points per game, and at this time, Paul George is actually looked at as a badass in the league. He hit game winners left and right, did windmill dunks in double overtime games, played lockdown defense, got a ton of steals. He was just all over the place. And then came the shoulder injury, or shoulders injury, because first he injures one shoulder and is out for a few games. Then he comes back, tapes it up, whatever, starts coming back to MVP form a little bit, and then injures his other shoulder. And then when he injured his other shoulder, he made his first one worse again. So he had both shoulders injured. Going into the playoffs, he could never get them back to 100%. He looked uncomfortable and his shot form was just a mess. Even with those injuries, he actually played better in the Portland series than he did against Utah, and obviously he played a lot better than he did against Denver. So at the time, Kawhi was like, hey, he gets healed up, that's going to be my number 2. He's going to go back to that form that he was at, and it's going to be a great year for us. So you can't really blame Kawhi for choosing Paul George at that point in time. And now it's time to talk about when things started going downhill. So in the regular season, Paul George averaged 21.5 points per game, and he was actually more efficient than he was in his MVP year. It's understandable that his points would drop off. He's playing with Kawhi now, and he's got a lot of other guys like Lou Williams on the team. But overall, Paul George had a hard time finding his fit on the team in the regular season, and you can't really blame the guy. Kawhi was load managing, coming in and out. Paul George had health problems. So when they played together, they were actually pretty solid, but they didn't play together enough. And on top of it all, COVID-19 happened. That caused even more issues with chemistry and team fit, because now you had guys coming in and out of the bubble. You had Lou Williams making pit stop for wings. You had Montrez coming in and out due to personal reasons. And not only that, but you had an overrated coach. I made a video on why I think Doc Rivers is overrated. But to sum it up a little bit, it's because he doesn't take initiative and he kind of just let the players run the team. I'm not trying to make excuses for Paul George, but it's understandable why his rhythm would be a little off going into the playoffs. But this isn't really about Paul George. Again, this is about Kawhi choosing Paul George. So Kawhi never could have predicted that Paul George would have a collapse like he had. Like I said, I brought up all the reasons why the team had issues and the chemistry and all that, but Paul George should have played better. He should have found a way to adapt and overcome. If you are going to trade all those picks for him and you're going to make all that investment for him being the number 2, he has to show up. Kawhi showed up in every game except for that game 7, and that's the game they needed him most. So he doesn't get a complete pass. But like I said, he couldn't have predicted that Paul George would collapse like he did. I still think Kawhi made the right choice at the time, but hindsight is always 20/20, and look how far the Raptors went without him, and look how far the Lakers went without him. I still don't agree with him going to the Lakers though, because that would just be the Warriors 2.0. I don't want to see that. Either way, he obviously made the wrong choice now that we know how Paul George handled the adversity and how he didn't overcome. Now for next year, do I think Paul George will be better? Yeah, he can't get any worse, so of course you can only go up from here. At the same time, when those playoffs roll around again and adversity strikes, will Paul George respond? So far he has proven an inability to do so. Leave a like if you enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments, do you think Paul George will overcome next year, and do you think the Clippers have any shot of winning it all now that we know what the Lakers roster looks like? Subscribe for more NBA content like this, and I will see you guys in the next upload.